A humble elderly woman sheltered a stranger on Christmas and inherited his entire estate. The snow fell gently over the little town, covering the streets, rooftops, and sidewalks in a thick, sparkling white blanket. It was Christmas Eve, and most of the town was bustling with last-minute preparations. People hurried to stores carrying bags full of gifts. Children's laughter echoed from brightly lit houses, and the smell of baked cookies and roasting turkeys filled the cold winter air. But not every house was alive with joy. At the edge of town, tucked away on a quiet, narrow street, sat a small, weathered home. Its paint had faded with time and the garden was overgrown, yet from within glowed a soft, warm light. Inside, Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield was quietly arranging a small wreath on her door. She had lived in this house for over 40 years, ever since her husband had passed away. Since then, life had become a series of quiet days, filled with simple routines and small comforts. Eleanor had always been a kind woman, gentle and thoughtful, but as the years passed, her children moved away to cities far from home, busy with their own lives. Friends had drifted away, some passed on, and the holidays now reminded her of the emptiness she felt each year. Tonight, however, she was determined to keep her spirits up. She hummed a soft tune as she prepared a modest dinner for herself, lighting a single candle on the small wooden table. A tiny Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, decorated with handmade ornaments she had kept since her children were little. It wasn't much, but to Eleanor, it felt like home. She wrapped a small gift she had bought herself, a simple scarf she liked, and placed it under the tree, smiling at the thought of having a cozy evening. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes, and snowflakes tapped gently against the glass. Eleanor paused and sipped her tea, her eyes wandering to the frost-covered street beyond. She felt the familiar pang of loneliness but reminded herself that being alone didn't mean being unhappy. She had books to read, memories to cherish, and now, a quiet evening to enjoy. Suddenly, a soft knock echoed from her front door. Eleanor's heart jumped. At this hour, on such a cold and snowy night, who could it be? She hesitated for a moment, a little unsure, and then cautiously went to the door. Peeking through the frosted glass, she saw a man standing on her doorstep, shivering, his coat dusted with snow. He looked cold, tired, and in need of help. Eleanor's first instinct was caution. She had always been careful with strangers, especially during the winter when accidents or mischief could happen. But something in the man's eyes, the quiet vulnerability, the polite yet worried expression, made her hesitate. She felt a sudden pull of compassion. She could not turn him away on Christmas Eve, not when someone clearly needed warmth and safety. "Hello," she called softly, opening the door just enough to speak. "Are you all right? It's very cold outside." The man looked relieved and managed a small, grateful smile. I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am. My car broke down and I didn't know where else to go. Could I stay for a little while, just until I can figure things out?" Eleanor studied him for a moment. He seemed honest, unthreatening, and utterly worn out from the cold. The snow had soaked his coat and frozen onto his gloves. Without thinking twice, she stepped aside. "Of course," she said warmly. "Come in. You'll catch your death out there." He stepped inside, brushing off the snow and thanking her repeatedly. Eleanor led him to the living room, where a small fire crackled in the fireplace. The warmth of the room and the soft glow of the candles immediately relaxed him. He looked around, taking in the modest but neat furnishings. "This is very kind of you," he said, his voice low but sincere. Eleanor shook her head, smiling gently. "It's nothing. I know what it feels like to be caught in the cold. Sit by the fire. I'll make some tea and we can warm you up." As she prepared the tea, she couldn't help but glance at him occasionally. He looked to be in his late 60s, with silver hair and tired eyes, but there was a quiet dignity about him. There was something about the way he carried himself, humble, respectful, that made Eleanor feel an instant connection. They sat together by the fire, sipping the steaming tea. Alina offered him a slice of her small Christmas cake, which he accepted gratefully. Conversation began slowly, with Alina asking gentle questions and the stranger answering politely. He introduced himself as Mr. James Hartley, a traveler who had come from a neighboring town. He spoke quietly, with a soft, thoughtful tone, and shared fragments of his life, nothing too personal, but enough to hint at a life of loneliness and long journeys. Alina listened with genuine interest. It was rare these days to find someone who could converse without haste or distraction. There was no rushing, no judgment, just two people sharing a quiet evening, finding warmth not just from the fire, but from the simple human connection. As the night wore on, the wind outside grew stronger, rattling the windows and causing snow to pile higher against the door. Alina felt a pang of concern for the man. "It looks like the storm will continue for a while," she said softly. "I don't think it's safe for you to go out tonight. You can stay here as long as you need." He looked at her, almost surprised by her offer. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose," he said, his voice tinged with hesitation. Alina smiled warmly. "You're not imposing. Christmas is a time to help one another. Besides, it's just a few hours. We can share the evening together by the fire." The man nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Thank you, truly. It's been a long time since anyone showed such kindness." They continued talking, sharing small stories of their lives. Alina spoke of her late husband, of the simple joys she had found in raising her children, and of the quiet routines that made her days meaningful. James shared memories of his travels, of distant cities and lonely roads, always careful to maintain a humble tone. There was no sense of boasting, only a quiet reflection of a life lived with both challenges and moments of beauty. Time seemed to slow in that little living room, the storm outside forgotten for a while. Alina felt something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of companionship. It was not friendship yet, not fully, but a spark of human connection that warmed her heart more than the fire could. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Alina glanced at the tiny Christmas tree in the corner. She realized that she had spent so many Christmases quietly, alone, yet this year was different. There was a stranger in her home, yes, but he was someone who reminded her of the goodness in people, of the value of kindness, and of the unexpected joys that life could bring even in its later years. James noticed her glance. "It's a beautiful tree," he said quietly. "You've kept it simple, but there's a warmth to it. It feels like home." Alina nodded, feeling a small swell of pride. "It's all I need. It reminds me of my children when they were little and the joy we shared together. It may be small, but it's enough to make the heart happy." For a moment, they both sat in silence, sipping tea, listening to the wind howling outside and watching the snow swirl around the garden. There was a quiet peace in the room, a feeling of safety and warmth that neither had expected to find on such a cold, lonely night. Finally, Alina stood and fetched a blanket for him. "You'll need this. The fire may be warm, but you should still keep cozy," she said gently, draping it over his shoulders. James accepted it with gratitude, and Alina felt a quiet satisfaction in her heart. She knew that this small act of hospitality, inviting a stranger in from the cold, was a simple gesture, but it meant something. It was a reminder that even in solitude, even in a world that often seemed indifferent, kindness could create moments of true connection. As the snow continued to fall outside, Alina looked around her little living room and smiled softly. Christmas Eve had begun quietly, as she had expected, but now it was filled with unexpected warmth, laughter, and the presence of a kind, humble stranger. She had no idea what the night would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. Opening her door that evening, letting someone into her home, had already made this Christmas the most memorable in years. And somewhere in the flickering shadows of the fire, James Hartley felt the same. For the first time in a long while, he felt safe, welcomed, and not alone in the world. Two lonely hearts, strangers until tonight, were quietly sharing a magical Christmas Eve, unaware that this night would change both of their lives forever. The first light of Christmas morning crept softly through the frosted windows of Eleanor Whitfield's little home. The snow had stopped falling overnight, leaving the world outside sparkling like a scene from a storybook. Eleanor stirred from her sleep, the warmth of her small home wrapping around her like a comforting hug. For the first time in many years, she woke up with a feeling of excitement rather than loneliness. She quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake James Hartley, the stranger she had sheltered from the storm the night before. She smiled as she looked around her living room. The small Christmas tree twinkled softly in the corner, ornaments catching the morning light. The fire had burned low during the night but was still warm, and the faint scent of cinnamon and baked goods lingered in the air. Eleanor felt a deep sense of peace. Last night had been unlike any she had experienced in a long time. There was something special about the quiet connection she had formed with James. It was more than politeness or good manners. It was a sense of understanding between two people who had both felt loneliness in their lives. As she prepared a small breakfast, Eleanor thought about what she could make for James. She had only a few ingredients in the kitchen, but she wanted to do something nice, something that would make him feel truly welcome. She set a small table by the fire with 2 cups of tea, some toast, and a slice of the simple Christmas cake she had made the day before. It wasn't much, but Eleanor believed that even the smallest gestures, when given with care, could bring warmth to the heart. Just as she was placing the food on the table, she heard James stir behind her. "Good morning," she said softly, turning to see him stretching and rubbing his hands together. He looked more rested than he had the night before, though the weariness of his travels was still visible in the lines of his face. "Good morning," James replied, a gentle smile on his face. "I slept well thanks to your kindness." Eleanor shook her head. "It was nothing. You needed shelter from the storm. Anyone would have done the same." He laughed softly, a sound that was both humble and warm. "Perhaps, but not everyone opens their home to a complete stranger on Christmas Eve. That takes courage and kindness." Eleanor felt a warmth in her chest that went beyond the fire. She poured him a cup of tea and sat down across from him. For a moment they simply enjoyed the quiet, listening to the soft crackle of the fire and the faint sounds of the snow crunching outside. There was a comfort in the silence, a shared understanding that didn't need words. Finally, James spoke. "Eleanor, may I call you that?" "Yes, of course," she replied. "And you are James, correct?" "Yes," he said, nodding. "Thank you again for letting me stay. I know it's unusual for someone to trust a stranger, and I appreciate it more than words can say." Eleanor smiled gently. "I've lived a long time, James. I've learned that sometimes kindness is the only thing that matters. We all need it, especially on days like today." James looked at her thoughtfully, as if studying her face for some deeper truth. "You have a wonderful spirit, Eleanor. I can see it in the way you care, in the way you live. You make others feel welcome, even when you have very little." Eleanor felt a quiet blush of embarrassment. She was not used to such compliments. "I only do what feels right," she said softly. "I never expect anything in return." For the next hour they ate breakfast together, sharing small talk about the snow, the town, and memories of past Christmases. Eleanor spoke of her children, now grown, and the traditions they had once shared. James listened attentively, asking questions and showing genuine interest. In turn, he shared stories of his own life, his travels, the people he had met, and the moments of quiet reflection he had found along the way. There was a gentle humility in his words, a sense that he had seen much of the world yet valued the simple things the most. As the morning sun climbed higher, Eleanor found herself laughing at one of James' stories about a lost dog he had helped in a distant city. It was a small moment, but it filled her home with warmth and joy. She realized that she had not laughed so freely in years. For the first time in a long while, her heart felt light. After breakfast, Alina suggested they take a short walk outside. "The snow is beautiful this morning," she said. "It would be a shame not to enjoy it." James agreed, and they bundled up in scarves, gloves, and coats before stepping out into the crisp winter air. The world was quiet, almost magical, with the snow glistening in the sunlight. They walked slowly down the narrow street, talking about the simple pleasures of life, like the way snow covers everything in a fresh, clean blanket, making the world feel new again. As they walked, James spoke of the people he had met in his travels and the lessons he had learned. "You see, Alina, I've learned that life is not about wealth or possessions. It's about the connections we make, the kindness we show, and the memories we create with others. Sometimes those connections are fleeting, but they leave a mark on the heart that lasts forever." Alina nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "Yes," she said, "I've always believed that too. Even a small act of kindness can change someone's day or even their life. You never know the impact of a simple gesture." James smiled at her, a quiet admiration in his eyes. "I think that's why I feel drawn to your home, Alina. You live by that belief, and it shows in everything you do. You have a rare gift, the ability to make others feel valued and cared for." Alina felt a mixture of humility and warmth. She had spent her life quietly helping others, often without recognition or reward, and now a stranger saw the value in her actions. It was a comforting feeling, one that reminded her that the world still held goodness, even in unexpected places. When they returned inside, Alina offered James another cup of tea. They settled back by the fire, and for a while they simply enjoyed the peacefulness of the morning. The storm had passed, the world outside was calm, and inside there was a sense of connection that neither had expected. James grew thoughtful as he gazed into the fire. "Alina," he began carefully, "I must tell you something. I am not a man who usually asks for help. I've spent many years relying on myself and keeping to my own path. But last night something about this home, about your kindness, made me realize how much I've been missing in life. Simple human connection, trust, and warmth, they are more valuable than anything I've ever known." Alina listened quietly, moved by his words. "It means a lot to hear you say that," she replied softly. "Sometimes the simplest things, the comfort of a fire, a warm meal, someone who listens, can make the biggest difference in our lives." James nodded. "Exactly, and that is why I am grateful to you, Alina. You reminded me of something I had forgotten, that life is not just about survival, but about sharing moments with others. Even a stranger can remind us of what truly matters." The conversation continued, flowing naturally, without hurry or interruption. They spoke of memories, of hopes, and of the quiet joys that often go unnoticed in the rush of everyday life. Alina realized that she had found a friend in James, someone who understood her in a way few people ever had. And James, in turn, felt a sense of peace he had not experienced in years. By mid-morning, Alina decided to show James some of the small gifts she had kept over the years, handmade ornaments, old photographs, and keepsakes from her children. As they went through each item, sharing stories and laughter, the bond between them grew stronger. There was a sense of trust developing, a quiet acknowledgement that this meeting was no accident. As the sun reached its highest point, Alina felt a deep sense of contentment. She had opened her home to a stranger out of compassion, never expecting anything in return, and yet the experience had brought her joy beyond measure. She realized that acts of kindness, no matter how small, have a ripple effect that can touch lives in unexpected ways. James looked around the cozy home, his eyes reflecting gratitude and respect. "Alina," he said softly, "you have shown me something I had almost forgotten. Life is about moments like this, simple, genuine, and heartfelt. You have given me more than shelter from the storm. You have reminded me of the warmth that exists in the world." Alina smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond the fire or tea. And you have reminded me, James, that even in our later years, new connections can bring happiness and meaning. It's never too late to experience something beautiful. As the day went on, the two continued to share stories, laughter, and quiet reflection. Christmas morning unfolded slowly, filled with gentle joy and the simple magic of human kindness. Neither Alina nor James knew what the future held, but they both understood that this day, this unexpected meeting, had already changed their lives in ways that would last forever. By the time the afternoon sun began to fade, casting a golden glow across the snow-covered town, Alina felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had opened her door on a cold, snowy night, not knowing who would be standing there, and yet that small act of kindness had brought warmth, friendship, and a renewed sense of purpose into her life. And James, for his part, felt a quiet hope that perhaps this was the beginning of something meaningful, a reminder that even strangers could make life unexpectedly rich and beautiful. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Alina Whitfield's little home, painting the room in soft shades of gold. The fire in the fireplace had burned down to glowing embers, but the warmth remained, filling the room with a comforting glow. Alina sat in her favorite chair, a soft blanket draped over her knees, while James Hartley remained nearby, settling into the worn armchair she had offered him. There was a peaceful rhythm to the quiet, a sense that time had slowed down just for them. Alina looked at James and smiled gently. "It feels like a different kind of Christmas this year," she said softly. "Not the kind I expected, but perhaps the one I needed." James nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "I know exactly what you mean. It's strange, isn't it? A simple act of kindness can turn an ordinary day into something extraordinary." Alina chuckled softly. "It's strange how life works sometimes. I never imagined that inviting a stranger in from the cold could lead to such warmth and, well, company." She paused, then added, "It feels almost magical." James smiled, a quiet warmth in his gaze. "Perhaps it is magical, Alina. Or maybe it's just a reminder that human connection, honest, genuine connection, is the real magic we often overlook." For a few moments, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the faint ticking of the clock and the occasional crackle of the fire. Outside, the snow glistened like diamonds under the soft winter light, and the quiet of the town made the moment feel almost timeless. Alina felt a deep sense of contentment, the kind that comes not from wealth or luxury, but from knowing that she had done something meaningful. "I wonder," James began cautiously, "why you are alone this Christmas. You have such a warm heart. Surely your children would want to be here with you." Alina sighed softly, her gaze drifting to the window. "My children live far away, busy with their own lives. I understand, of course. They have families, jobs, responsibilities, and I have grown used to being on my own. But it doesn't mean I don't miss them or that I don't think about them every day." James listened with quiet empathy. "I understand. I too have spent many Christmases alone, traveling, working, or simply existing without real companionship. It can be lonely, even when the world is filled with people." Alina nodded. "Exactly. That's why last night meant so much to me. I didn't expect anyone to knock on my door, and yet here you are. It reminds me that life can still surprise us, even in our later years." James looked at her with admiration. "You have a remarkable spirit, Alina. Most people, if left alone for so long, might become bitter or distant. But you open your heart. You see the good in people, even strangers." Alina blushed slightly, feeling both shy and proud. "I suppose I've learned that kindness doesn't cost anything, yet it can give everything. I've lived a simple life, James, and the things I have are small, but the joy of helping others, that has always been the greatest reward." James smiled warmly. "That is a rare quality. Many people forget it, or they become so focused on themselves that they forget the importance of generosity and compassion. You, Alina, are a reminder of what truly matters." The conversation drifted to lighter topics as the afternoon passed. Alina showed James her small collection of Christmas decorations, each one with its own story. A hand-painted ornament from her daughter's childhood, a tiny wooden sleigh carved by her late husband, a string of lights that had illuminated her home for decades. Each piece was a memory, a connection to her past, and a testament to the love she had shared with her family. James listened intently, genuinely interested in every story. He asked questions about her children, about the places she had lived, and about the traditions she cherished. Alina found herself laughing more freely than she had in years, enjoying the simple pleasure of sharing her life with someone who truly cared. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm orange glow through the window, Alina suggested they step outside for a moment. "The snow looks beautiful at this hour," she said. "Perhaps we can enjoy a short walk before the evening comes." James agreed, and they bundled up in scarves, gloves, and coats before stepping out into the crisp winter air. The world outside was serene, the snow sparkling in the fading light. Their footsteps crunched softly against the fresh snow as they walked along the quiet street, talking about small joys and memories that had shaped their lives. "You know," James said thoughtfully, "I've seen many places in my life, traveled many roads, and yet there is something about this quiet town and this simple home that feels more comforting than anywhere I've been. It's not the place itself, but the people who inhabit it, the kindness, the warmth, the heart." Alina smiled, touched by his words. "That's exactly how I feel. A home is not about the size of the rooms or the things inside it. It's about the people who live there and the love and care they share." They walked a little further, pausing occasionally to admire the beauty of the winter landscape. James picked up a small handful of snow and tossed it gently into the air, laughing as Alina dodged the soft flakes. It was a simple moment, yet it carried a sense of joy and freedom that neither had felt in a long time. As they returned inside, Alina noticed a change in James' demeanor. He seemed more relaxed, more at peace, as if the weight of years of solitude and travel had been lifted, even if only for a short while. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her simple act of hospitality had made a real difference. Once back inside, they settled by the fire again. Alina offered him more tea, and they continued their conversation, this time delving into their hopes for the future. James spoke cautiously about his life, admitting that he had no close family to leave his estate to, and that he had often wondered who he could trust to carry out his wishes. Alina listened silently, sensing the weight of his words. She had never thought about wealth or inheritance, but she understood the deeper meaning behind his confession. It was not about money, it was about trust, about finding someone who would honor his life and values. "You have lived a life of generosity, Alina," James said quietly. "Even in small ways, you have shown me the value of compassion, and I cannot help but wonder, if there are others like you in the world, perhaps it is a brighter place than I imagined." Alina felt a mixture of surprise and humility. She had never thought of herself as extraordinary. She had simply lived her life with kindness and care. Yet James' words touched her deeply, reminding her that even small acts of goodness could have a lasting impact. As evening approached, Alina prepared a modest dinner, sharing it with James in the warm glow of the firelight. They talked and laughed, shared stories, and reflected on the unexpected joy of the day. Alina realized that this Christmas, unlike any she had experienced before, was filled with connection, understanding, and the quiet magic of human kindness. After dinner, James grew quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "Alina," he said softly, "I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you have done for me. You have shown me the meaning of generosity, of hospitality, and of genuine human connection. This evening, this day has reminded me of the goodness in the world." Alina felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. And you have reminded me, James, that even strangers can bring light into our lives. I never expected that inviting someone in from the cold could bring so much warmth into my heart." They spent the rest of the evening talking quietly, reflecting on their shared experiences and enjoying the peaceful stillness of the night. Alina felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that she had made a difference in someone's life, even in such a simple way. James, in turn, felt a renewed sense of hope, realizing that human kindness could still touch him, even after years of solitude. As Alina prepared for bed that night, she glanced at James, who had settled in a guest room she had prepared. She felt a quiet sense of pride and satisfaction, knowing that her home had become a place of warmth, comfort, and connection. She realized that the true meaning of Christmas was not in gifts or decorations, but in the simple acts of kindness and the bonds that form between people. Before closing her eyes, Alina whispered a small prayer of gratitude for the snow, for the warmth of her home, and for the stranger who had walked into her life and reminded her of the power of human connection. Outside, the town was quiet, the snow glistening under the pale light of the moon, as if reflecting the gentle magic that had filled Alina's heart that day. And somewhere down the hall, James Hartley lay awake, feeling the same sense of wonder and gratitude. He had found not only shelter from the storm, but also a reminder that life could still hold surprises, joy, and friendship, even in the most unexpected places. The morning after Christmas passed quietly in Alina Whitfield's small home. The soft winter sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the living room. The air still carried the faint scent of the fire from the night before, mingled with the aroma of the breakfast Alina had prepared. There was a calmness in the house, a gentle stillness that invited reflection. Alina moved about her home, tidying a little, preparing tea, and glancing occasionally at the small Christmas tree that had stood bright and cheerful throughout the day. James Hartley had spent a quiet night in the guest room Alina had prepared. When he emerged in the morning, he looked more rested and calm than he had in years. There was something different in his expression, a softness, a quiet gratitude, and a gentle warmth that was visible in his eyes. Alina noticed it immediately. She welcomed him with a smile and poured them both a cup of tea, letting the steam rise and fill the room with comfort. "Good morning, Alina," James said softly, settling into the chair by the window. "I slept well. Thank you again for everything. I cannot remember the last time someone showed me such kindness." Alina shook her head, smiling gently. "It's nothing. Really, it's just a small act, but I am glad you slept well. You must be tired after all your travels and the storm last night." James nodded thoughtfully. "I am, yes, but more than tired, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time: peace, safety, and something even more surprising, hope." Alina tilted her head, curious. "Hope, that is a strong word. Why hope?" James took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers. "Because, Alina, you reminded me that there are still good people in the world. People who care without expecting anything in return. People whose kindness can change lives. You did that for me." Alina felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had always lived by the simple belief that kindness mattered, but hearing someone acknowledge it so sincerely was rare. Thank you, James. That means more than I can say." The morning passed with quiet conversation. They talked about memories from their childhoods, shared small anecdotes, and laughed over minor misadventures. Alina found herself opening up in ways she hadn't for years. James listened patiently, offering encouragement, sharing wisdom, and occasionally reflecting on how his own life had been shaped by the kindness of strangers. After a while, Alina noticed a change in James' demeanor. He seemed more thoughtful, as if he were weighing something important before speaking. She waited patiently, sensing that he had something on his mind. "Alina," he began carefully, "I want to tell you something." It may sound unusual, but I trust you, and I feel that you are someone who understands the value of honesty and integrity." Alina nodded, her curiosity piqued. "Go on, James. You can tell me anything." James took a deep breath. "I have lived most of my life alone. I have no immediate family I trust to care for what I leave behind. I have accumulated some wealth over the years, and I have often wondered who would inherit it, who would honor it, who would make good use of it. It is not just money, Alina. It is a responsibility, and I have not found anyone worthy of it. Until now." Alina blinked, taken aback by his words. She had never imagined that her small act of kindness could be connected to something so significant. "James, I don't understand." "What do you mean?" James looked at her with quiet sincerity. "I mean that last night when you invited me in from the storm, when you offered warmth, food, and conversation, I saw in you exactly the qualities I value most: trustworthiness, compassion, humility, and integrity. Qualities that cannot be bought or learned. Qualities that are rare in the world. Alina, I believe that you are the person who should inherit my estate should I pass on. Not because I expect anything in return, but because I believe you would honor it with the same care and respect that you show in your life every day." Alina's heart raced. She had always lived simply, never imagining that her quiet life of modest means and thoughtful acts could attract such recognition. She could hardly find words, her mind swirling with disbelief and awe. "James, I don't know what to say. This is incredible. I never expected anything like this." James smiled gently. "You should not feel obligated, Alina. I am offering this to you not because I owe you anything, but because I trust you. I trust you to care for it, to use it wisely, and to honor it in a way that aligns with your values. You have shown me the true meaning of kindness, and I want to ensure that your life, and the lives of others you care for, are blessed in return." Alina felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had never imagined such generosity, such trust, or such recognition. She thought of her small home, her modest possessions, and her quiet routines. And yet here was a man, a stranger only a day before, entrusting her with something monumental. She felt a mixture of humility, gratitude, and awe. I don't know if I am worthy," she whispered. "I have lived a simple life, James. I've done what I could, what I believed was right. I never imagined something like this could happen to me." James reached out and placed a hand over hers, his expression tender and sincere. "Alina, it is precisely because you live your life with integrity and care that I trust you. Worthiness is not measured by wealth, experience, or status. It is measured by the heart, and you have the kindest, most generous heart I have ever known." Alina felt a deep sense of humility and wonder. She realized that her life of small, thoughtful gestures, her quiet care for others, had brought her something far beyond material wealth. It had brought her trust, respect, and an opportunity to make a meaningful difference in the world. For the rest of the morning, they discussed practical matters. James explained the details of his estate, investments, property, charitable funds, and how he hoped Alina could manage or distribute them in ways that would benefit others. He spoke with clarity and patience, careful not to overwhelm her with too much information at once. Alina listened attentively, asking questions, taking notes, and absorbing everything. As the conversation continued, Alina found herself reflecting on her life in a new way. She realized that her small acts of kindness, inviting a stranger in from the cold, listening with empathy, sharing what little she had, were not insignificant. They had the power to change lives, to create connections, and even to shape futures. And now they had changed her own life in ways she could never have imagined. After a pause, James looked at her with a gentle smile. "Alina, I know this is sudden and perhaps overwhelming. I do not expect you to make any decisions immediately. Take your time. Consider what this means and know that my offer comes from trust and respect, not obligation." Alina nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. "Thank you, James. I will think carefully about this. I promise I will honor your trust and use it wisely, in ways that reflect the kindness you have shown me." For a while, they sat quietly by the fire, the room filled with a calm sense of purpose. Outside, the snow sparkled in the afternoon light, reflecting the quiet magic of the day. Alina realized that her life had shifted in an instant, not because of wealth or chance, but because of something far more powerful: her willingness to act with compassion and integrity, even toward a stranger. As the evening approached, Alina prepared a simple dinner, sharing it with James once again. They spoke of future possibilities, of how they could use the estate to help others, and of the joy that comes from giving rather than receiving. Alina felt a sense of purpose and hope she had not felt in decades. She realized that her quiet life, once filled with solitude, was now filled with potential, responsibility, and the chance to make a meaningful difference in the world. When the night fell, Alina and James sat by the fireplace one last time before retiring for the evening. Alina looked at him, feeling a deep gratitude. "James, you have changed my life in ways I never expected. I cannot thank you enough." James smiled warmly. "No thanks are needed, Alina. You have earned this trust through your kindness, your patience, and your generosity. It is my honor to place this responsibility in your hands. And more than that, it is my hope that you will continue to spread the same kindness that brought us together." Alina felt tears welling in her eyes. She realized that the true gift of this Christmas was not the wealth or the estate itself, but the recognition of her life of quiet goodness and the opportunity to create a legacy of kindness that could continue beyond her own home. As she prepared for bed, Alina whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. She thought of her family, her quiet home, and the stranger who had walked into her life and changed it forever. She knew that life would never be the same, and that this Christmas would always hold a special place in her heart, a reminder that even the simplest acts of kindness could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Outside, the snow glistened under the pale light of the moon, reflecting the quiet magic that had entered Alina's life that day. Somewhere in the house, James Hartley too felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that his trust was well placed and that the world still held goodness, compassion, and hope. That night, Alina fell asleep with a sense of fulfillment she had never known, her heart full of gratitude and wonder. And for James, the act of kindness he had received and the bond he had formed with Alina became a reminder that even in the later years of life, unexpected gifts of trust, friendship, and shared purpose could transform everything. The weeks after Christmas passed in a quiet but steady rhythm for Alina Whitfield. Each day seemed brighter than the last, though she often found herself reflecting on the remarkable events of that winter. She had spent her life quietly, helping others in small ways and living modestly, never imagining that a single act of kindness could alter the course of her entire life. Yet here she was, realizing that the world could surprise even the most ordinary person with extraordinary opportunities. James Hartley had spent several days in Alina's home, helping her understand the details of his estate and the responsibilities he was entrusting to her. They pored over documents together, discussing investments, properties, and charitable foundations he had supported over the years. Alina listened intently, asking questions and taking careful notes. She was determined to honor his trust with the same integrity and care that had inspired him to offer it in the first place. "It is overwhelming," Alina admitted one afternoon, sitting by the fire with a stack of papers before her. "I never imagined I would have such responsibility. I have lived a simple life, James. I do not know much about wealth or property management." James smiled gently. "You are more than capable, Alina. The estate is substantial, yes, but the most important thing is your judgment, your values, and your care for others. You do not need to know every detail immediately." The fact that you are willing to learn and act thoughtfully shows that you are exactly the person I hoped would inherit this responsibility. Alina felt a mixture of humility and determination. She realized that this was not just about material wealth, it was about making a difference in the lives of others. For the first time, she saw her quiet acts of kindness as part of a larger purpose. She could take the compassion she had always shown and extend it beyond her own home, helping her community and even strangers in need. Over the next few days, Alina began to explore the possibilities. She made a list of local charities that helped the elderly, children, and families in need. She spoke with neighbors who had small businesses struggling to stay afloat in the cold winter months. She even considered ways to improve her home so that it could accommodate visitors, creating a space where people could find warmth and comfort just as James had found when the storm hit. James watched Alina with quiet admiration. "You have an extraordinary heart, Alina. Most people would be overwhelmed or distracted by the practicalities of an inheritance. But you are thinking about others first. That is a rare gift." Alina smiled softly. "It feels natural, James. I have always believed that wealth is not truly meaningful unless it can be used to help others. This opportunity, it feels like a way to multiply the good I can do in the world." As the days passed, word of James' generosity spread slowly, though Alina never sought recognition. She remained humble, quietly taking steps to manage the estate responsibly and thoughtfully. James stayed with her, guiding her through decisions and offering advice, though he always allowed her to lead. Alina felt empowered in a way she had not expected. She was no longer just a small, lonely woman in a modest home. She was a guardian of something meaningful, entrusted with the chance to make a real difference. One afternoon, as Alina reviewed a list of charitable projects she planned to fund, James approached her with a soft smile. "Alina, I have one more thing to share with you. It is official now. I have amended my will to reflect your inheritance. You are the sole beneficiary. The estate, the properties, and the charitable funds, all of it is yours to manage as you see fit." Alina gasped softly, feeling her hands tremble. She had anticipated responsibility, yes, but she had not expected the formal confirmation of her role. "James, I don't know what to say. I am honored and I will do everything I can to make the most of this. I promise you I will use it wisely and kindly." James placed a reassuring hand on hers. "I know you will, Alina. I have complete faith in you. And more than that, I am grateful to have met you. You have reminded me that even in a world that can seem harsh and uncaring, there are people whose hearts are pure and generous. You are one of them." Tears filled Alina's eyes, not from sadness but from overwhelming gratitude. She realized that her life had been transformed not by luck or chance, but by the simple, courageous act of opening her door to a stranger on a snowy Christmas Eve. That small act had grown into a life-changing opportunity, and she knew that the true reward lay not in wealth, but in the chance to spread kindness to others. In the following weeks, Alina began implementing her plans. She renovated her home slightly, creating a cozy guest room for those in need. She funded local charities, ensuring that children, elderly residents, and struggling families received assistance during the harsh winter months. She also established a small scholarship fund for students in the town, allowing young people to pursue education that might have seemed out of reach otherwise. Through it all, James remained a quiet presence, supporting her decisions but never overshadowing her. Alina found comfort in his wisdom and experience, but she also discovered her own confidence in managing the estate and making meaningful decisions. Each day she felt more empowered and more fulfilled, realizing that her life, once quiet and ordinary, now carried purpose and impact far beyond what she had ever imagined. Neighbors began to notice the changes, not just in Alina's home, but in her demeanor. She walked with a renewed confidence, greeted people with warmth and cheer, and carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had found her place in the world. Though she remained humble, there was a light in her eyes that spoke of fulfillment and joy. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Alina and James sat by the fire in the living room. The soft glow reflected the changes that had taken place in both their lives. Alina felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her life had been forever changed by a single act of kindness, and that she now had the ability to bring warmth and hope to countless others. "Alina," James said softly, "I want you to know that what you have done with the estate is more than I could have hoped for. You have honored my trust, not for recognition or reward, but because it is your nature to help others. You have reminded me, and perhaps the world, that true generosity comes from the heart." Alina smiled, feeling a quiet blush. "I only did what felt right, James. I never expected anything in return. But now, seeing the impact we can have together, it is more than I could have imagined. I feel alive in a way I haven't for years." James reached across and gently took her hand. "You deserve this happiness, Alina. And you deserve to know that your kindness has made a difference not only in my life, but in the lives of many others. You are a remarkable woman, and I am grateful to call you my friend." Alina felt a surge of gratitude and warmth. She realized that life's greatest treasures were not material, but emotional and spiritual. The connections we make, the trust we build, and the difference we create in the world. That simple Christmas Eve, when she had opened her door to a stranger, had grown into a life of purpose, joy, and fulfillment beyond her wildest dreams. The first New Year after the inheritance brought new celebrations to Alina's home. She hosted a small gathering of neighbors and friends, sharing warmth, laughter, and good food. People marveled at the generosity of the gifts she had facilitated for the community and at the transformation in her own life. Yet Alina remained humble, directing praise toward the values she had always held close: kindness, integrity, and compassion. James joined her quietly, observing the happiness around the room. "Alina," he said softly, "this is the result of your heart. You opened your home, your heart, and now the world feels brighter because of it." Alina looked around the room, at the smiling faces of friends and neighbors, and felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She realized that her life, once quiet and lonely, had now become full of joy, purpose, and connection. She had inherited more than an estate. She had inherited the chance to make a lasting impact on the lives of others. As the evening came to a close, and the guests left, Alina and James sat quietly by the fire, reflecting on the journey that had begun on that snowy Christmas Eve. The quiet room, the soft crackle of the fire, and the warmth of friendship filled the space with peace and contentment. "James," Alina said softly, "I never imagined that one small act, inviting a stranger in from the cold, could lead to something so extraordinary. It has changed my life in ways I never dreamed of." James nodded, smiling. "And you, Alina, have reminded me that life's true treasures are found not in wealth or status, but in trust, kindness, and the connections we create. You are living proof of that truth." Alina leaned back in her chair, a smile on her face and warmth in her heart. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that with trust, kindness, and integrity, she could face them with confidence. The stranger who had arrived at her door on a snowy Christmas Eve had given her not only trust and opportunity, but also a reminder of the extraordinary power of simple human kindness. And so, Alina Whitfield's life entered a new chapter, one filled with generosity, purpose, and joy. Her home became a place of warmth and welcome, her heart a beacon of compassion, and her life a testament to the extraordinary difference one act of kindness can make. The legacy of that Christmas Eve lived on, not just in her inheritance, but in the countless lives she touched, and the reminder that the smallest gestures can lead to the greatest blessings.